Welcome to the Diplowoman podcast, where we will be talking with and about incredible women mediators, facilitators, negotiators, ambassadors, peacemakers, peacebuilders, and more. I am Ekmekji, and I will be your host in this journey of mainstreaming the women, peace, and security agenda into our lifestyles. With a focus on the Arab region, the Diplowoman podcast comes to you in collaboration with the Ghassan Fares Institute for Public Policy and International Affairs at the American University of Beirut, and is made possible by the generous support of UN Women. The Arabic subtitled video edition is available on the Diplowoman podcast YouTube channel. We're thinking out loud with Dr. Rouba Mhaissen in this new episode of the Diplowoman podcast. Rouba is an economist, she's a development practitioner, and a community mobilizer. Rouba is the founder of Sawa, where she established it after the Syrian war started to work on the ground with Syrian refugees. A Lebanese Syrian peacebuilder, Rouba has been listed on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list for policy and law in 2017. Rouba, welcome to the Diplowoman podcast.
Thank you, Karma, and thank you for hosting me at this amazing podcast, which also hosts incredibly inspirational women.
Rouba, let's talk a little bit about your work. First, can you tell us what a community mobilizer is?
We live in societies and communities that has a lot of resources. So, whether it's environmental resources, human resources, financial resources, but oftentimes these resources remain untapped. And the reason is because people aren't inspired enough, they don't feel like they belong to a cause, they don't feel like they have the passion to change the community where they live in. However, I've noticed throughout the years that it's very easy to tap into these resources and make people realize that you don't have to look very far when you're trying to achieve something, when you're trying to follow your dreams. You can tap into your community, you can tap into your friends, the resources that are around you, even before going into the international community and others. So a community mobilizer is basically someone who comes into a community and try to awaken the potential and the social energy that's in the community towards a certain cause or a certain dream that the community is trying to establish, basically.
But as a practitioner, you started as an economist. So I'm curious to see what drove you into this field of peace building. What made you wake up one morning and say, this is what I want to do?
Economics is a very, very good base for people. It allows you to understand interactions in the society at a micro level and at a macro level. But since I was younger, I was always, touched or, appalled by the injustices in our societies. Whether we look at the Arab world, whether you look at Armenia, at, all the countries around us, there are so many injustices around us. And we grew up talking about Palestine. We grew up listening about memories of our parents during the civil war. So that's what drove me into the work that I do. And when the Syrian revolution started, I was watching TV and I heard about the first 40 Syrian families that crossed into Lebanon.
Yes, and you helped the first 40 families.
Indeed, because I thought, we are communities where we are known for generosity, big feasts, food, and to suddenly see your own people on the ground, that was the main incentive for me to start this kind of work.
But let's be honest, in Lebanon, the Syrian refugee situation, triggered a lot of, I want to say racism, a lot of different sentiments. And this means you probably face a lot of challenges on the ground, whether with host communities, and this is a reality, we have to speak about it. Do you feel like, you spoke about generosity. I mean, how did you really find the Lebanese host communities in the beginning and now? Because I feel things evolved over time.
Indeed, Karma. That was what I was going to say. When we first started working, there wasn't a single Lebanese family who would agree to buy their kids, for example, something for Eid and not buy the family next door, the Syrian family. I remember in Akkar, the poorest communities of Lebanon, every household was open and hosted a Syrian family. But don't forget that it's been more than 10 years, 11 years now, and the Lebanese people are facing challenges themselves, not to mention the way that the Syrian refugee issue has been politicized by politicians as a divisive factor. So maybe call me naive, but I believe in that people are inherently good, inherently generous.
I agree with you.
This is why you have to, always remind them of this good traits that are inherently in them. So I feel like, yes, it's evolved. Syrians today are living a very difficult life in Lebanon. But so are the Palestinians, so are the Lebanese. You find even racism, I don't know what you call it, but between Lebanese themselves. Yani we live in a very divided and sensitive, there are so many points of tension in our communities. So yes, I'm tiptoeing around all of these sensitivities to try to make out the best we can within the circumstances.
And Sawa, tell me a little bit more about this. So when you started it, how many were you? How has it grown? Yeah. What are the main activities that this organization
So we started as a group of friends. I was 22-year-old at the time. I'm not going to say how old, you can do the math. But we started as a small initiative just to distribute what was needed. But it grew eventually to become owned by the community. So it's an organization for the community, by the community. We only do the difficult work of the bureaucratic stuff, but it's mainly driven by the community in order for them to unleash their agency and ownership over their own lives. So yes, unfortunately we couldn't get out of the basic needs that are needed because we are still living in hard circumstances. But the work evolved into supporting individuals to unleash their potential, to get trainings, to start their own initiatives, to do advocacy work at the local level and link up to the international level, to mediate between them, the NGOs, the host communities, the municipality, and to really become agents of their own lives and of their future mainly.
This is actually, you put your finger on a very important point, how to take this community work and elevate it to the international community, to sort of the higher level of decision making. I mean, I know we call this track 3 mediation or track 3 diplomacy when we work in the community, on the community level. But you briefed the Security Council, you briefed the United Nations Security Council on the work that you do. So somewhere, you were able to take that work and present it on an international multilateral level to decision makers. So how was that experience?
So here there are two points. The first point is about diplomacy and talking about politics, because usually we always hear politics and diplomacy and mediation, and we often think about men in suits wearing ties, people who don't look like us as women, or even like the community, whereas there is the day-to-day politics, or politics with a small p. The interactions of people are inherently political, and these are the things that make any political agreement hold on the ground. We've seen examples, for example, let me talk about Bosnia or Colombia, where yes, a peace agreement was signed at some higher level, but if there is no acceptance of this peace agreement on the ground in the community, then this peace agreement is only a piece of paper. It doesn't mean anything on the ground. And people on the ground are negotiating day in and day out. Let's say in Syria, they are negotiating with armed groups, they are negotiating with de facto powers that are on the ground, with the Turkish authorities at some point with the Americans, they are negotiating with the municipality here in Lebanon, they are negotiating with the NGOs.
With the security agencies.
With the security agencies, they are negotiating with, women are negotiating with their husbands to leave the house, so there are all these kinds of mediations happening, and this is indeed what I was trying to talk about at the Security Council, shedding the light about women mediators. And I wish one of these women was invited in my place to talk at the Security Council, but it's a long process to be selected. But these women, we have to recognize them as local peace mediators, as local community mediators on the ground. About the UN Security Council, after all these years, we lost our faith. We lost our faith in the system, in the Security Council, which did not stop genocides when they were happening, which did not interfere when missiles and shelling was on top of people's heads. But I felt proud because it's about representation, not in the sense of I'm elected to represent my people at the Security Council, no, but there will be other women, other young ladies.
You're paving the way. You're paving the way.
Yes, they are looking and they are saying, okay, she's a woman, she's a mother, she's wearing hijab, she's Muslim, and still she made it. She didn't negotiate her identity, and she's there. So maybe I can be there too and do more than what she did. This is what it meant for me above anything else.
So, I mean, in addition to everything you said, you're also very young. And so I wanted to ask you, what are some of the challenges that you face? I mean, can you tell us of a story, of an anecdote that that happened to you where you thought, wait a minute, you know, this is a little bit discriminating against me. You know, had I been a man or a male, this would have not happened to me.
Yeah, actually, you just reminded me of an episode. We were at the UN headquarters in New York, and it was me and my colleague. He was going to brief everyone about the human rights situation. And I was going to brief them about the humanitarian situation. And that meeting was with a European diplomat, and she was a woman. And we went into the meeting, and she greeted him. She gave him her card, and she asked him what he wanted to drink, and she didn't even look at me. She probably thought I was a secretary or something.
This is coming from a woman.
Exactly.
Yes.
From a woman of a country, from a country which, talks about gender equality and all of that. And then she started asking him, she did a long introduction, started asking him about the situation. And this is where I say that we really need allies with us, even men allies that, and we need to talk about these challenges so that men, sometimes they want to be our allies, but they don't know that we face these situations, or they know, but they don't. But when we push them, because I kind of, did something under the table to tell him, like, she's not even recognizing my presence. And this is where he said, by the way, this is Dr. Rouba, she's the one who is briefing you, and I'm only here with her to accompany her. So he kind of elevated. I was very young, so I didn't know how to fend for myself at the time. But you face these situations all the time. And if there are any young women watching this podcast, I tell them, just believe in yourself and just hang in there. If you are prepared, if you know your content, if you know what you're doing, eventually they have no other choice but to recognize your presence. It takes time, it takes courage, but other women paved the way for me, and I hope we are also, Karma.
I hope so too.
Yeah,
I hope, this is why we're doing what we're doing, so that we can tell the story, we can provide a narrative for you to tell your version of the story, because it's the version of the story that counts. For so long we've been hearing only one very male-dominated version, and today we want to hear yours and of women on the ground. Let me ask you this: in terms of growing in this peace-building field, in the women, peace and security field, what do you feel are some of the challenges that are or barriers that are still not allowing us to be at the top level? I mean, the community work is very important. Again, I'm definitely, the whole point of this is to shed the light on the community peace building work. But somewhere, how do we tie this work to track 2? How do we tie it to track 1, to the higher level? Because I feel like there's sort of like a disconnect. Yes. And you spoke about building alliances. And I feel like, we've heard a lot of women say, yes, we have women in the Council of Ministers, but they don't really represent the women of my country. They do not understand our challenges. They do not understand the complexities of what we are facing, the challenges we are facing. And so how can we actually build that bridge as peace builders?
I think, Karma, I think we need to change the way we are defining leadership. Because oftentimes, if you are a woman, you feel like, in order for me to succeed and arrive to this point, I have to become, more cold. I have to become...
Adopting masculine traits.
Absolutely, and I have to become, I have to prove myself so much that I lose the humble aspect of my personality. I would lose the compassion aspect. I'm fighting so many battles to arrive there that at some point I can't do it all. I lose touch with the local communities. And you know, these kind of things where women connect to each other, talk to each other, rely on each other, because I may not want to be at the top level, but I have the resources to support women at the top level, to link up with women at
Exactly,
the top level.
exactly.
You know, women at the top, they have to also, if they had a chance once and twice and three times, for example, to be at a certain place, maybe they can start nominating other women to be in their place. Maybe we need to take a collective decision that any council of ministers, any meeting that's a high-level meeting, a political meeting, if there isn't a specific number of women, then we will not be there. So to realize that our benefit collectively is stronger or more important than our benefit individually. And because there are so many limited resources for women, a lot of women aren't like that. We always hear المرأة عدو المرأة, like women are the enemies of women, because we are set up against so much. We have to fight for our presence, for our seat at the table. We have to fight for other men to take us seriously. Probably in order for us to go to this meeting, we had to beg our husbands to stay with our kids because of segregation of labor within the household. So we have already so many things that we are fighting. So I think be more gentle towards one another and support one another in all of these aspects.
Rouba, how do you see the future of Syria? How do you see the future of Syrian women?
Yeah. It's very difficult today to imagine what the future of Syria will be like, because every time we hit rock bottom, there's even worse things that are happening. It's a very grim situation. It's the majority of Syrians today, and the majority of Syrians at the age of the productive age, are outside Syria. Everyone left. So I cannot imagine the future of Syria without its people. So we need people to believe in Syria and for them to come back. We need to tap into the diaspora elements of our community. I believe in a Syria, in a democratic, free Syria, one that respects human rights violations. Respects human rights, sorry. Just yesterday, one detainee was released after 11 years, 10 and a half years in prison, simply for being a pharmacist. He was taken to prison. So I cannot imagine this Syria. This is not our Syria. But today something was broken. People aren't scared anymore, and they are trying to reimagine their country. So I think collectively we can reimagine it, and you cannot reimagine it without half of the society. So women will play an integral part, and they are already playing an integral part because they are the ones who are left behind. Demographically today, Syria consists of more women than men because of all the challenges, men who died, men who emigrated. So we need to continue working with these women and supporting them so that they can achieve the vision that they see for their country.
But what is it that gives you hope and motivation? I mean, in this field, we're always trying to motivate ourselves. The rewards are limited, in a sense. You wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, I'm gonna keep doing what I do because.
Yeah. Sometimes I say when I go to an education center and I see these tiny little hands, drawing or writing, I feel like this gives me motivation, these little fingers. But then I realize that 3 years down the line, they will be selling tissues at a crossroad, and that gives me demotivation. But really, it's the community, it's the small acts of kindness, it's the fact that when we distribute a food basket, they will invite you to the tent to drink coffee. It's also my own children, my two boys, Ahmed and Omar, thinking, thank you, and your two boys, and our children thinking that we want something better for them. So we will do the best we can. And someone told me something once. He said, you are not God. So indeed, we are not God. We will not change everything. We cannot be in control of everything, but we do what we can and we hope for the best, I think.
How is the global situation today, feeding into the work that you are doing? I mean, climate change, the food security or the food insecurity issues, the war, in Europe. First Syria was headline news, then Afghanistan was headline news, then Yemen, and then Afghanistan, and then now everything dropped off the radar, and the whole world is focused on Ukraine. You have, donor fatigue, the COVID crisis, all these intertwined. How can we still keep our priorities on the international stage?
What you're saying is very true, and it goes back to the first question you asked me about community mobilizing, because we cannot rely on international support forever. You've studied development, I've studied. We know that at some point the donors will pack their bags and move on, and
we're seeing it happen.
We're seeing it happen, and there will be people who look more like them and who watch Netflix and who have cars, who will take the priority because they are more worthy of people's attention. And so this is why building local resources and building sustainable pathways in the community is very important. But this can't be enough, because already we don't have enough resources. The community is collapsing. To continue to talk about Syria, about your cause, continue talking about it, and even on days where you feel like I can't see the result of what I'm doing, continue talking about it, and then also believe that the world is made up of interconnected circles. So if you support your community, you are also helping refugees in Ukraine. You are also helping people in the US, because at the end of the day, our world is interconnected. And if people voted in the US, and if Trump wasn't president at some point, maybe things would have been different. So everything is somehow interconnected. So just do the work, and don't overthink about the big picture. It's important to continue talking, to continue advocating, to do the politics at the high level, but not to let it discourage you or affect your incentive at a local level.
So Rouba Mhaissen, in 10 years, will you still be doing what you're doing?
I don't know, but I will hopefully still be doing something I'm passionate about. Maybe it will be in this field, maybe it will be somewhere else. But I hope I will continue to be, true to myself and true to my passions.
I'm sure you will. You speak with so much passion, compassion, and positive energy. I wish you all the best in the work that you are doing. Dr. Rouba Mhaissen, thank you for being a guest with us.
Thank you, Diplowoman. Thank you, Karma.